5 spine-chilling motel tales exposed. Discover the sinister secrets that haunt forever. Sarah stood outside the Haven Inn, the flickering neon sign casting an eerie glow across the peeling paint of the building. With a heavy heart, she pushed open the creaking door, aware that this could be her lifeline or her doom. The air inside was thick, almost suffocating, and an unsettling chill crawled up her spine. This wasn't just any motel, it was a rumor come to life, a grisly tale that whispered of horrors buried deep within its dilapidated walls. As the clock struck midnight, Sarah felt the shadows shift, like restless spirits waiting for something or someone. That first night, the calmness was a facade. With every tick of the clock, a cacophony of muffled whispers echoed through the desolate hallways. Sarah's heart raced as she glanced over her shoulder, catching a fleeting shadow dancing at the edge of her vision. It melted away, leaving her breathless, forcing her to question her sanity. Who would stay here? The travelers that trickled in wore worry etched on their faces, and a few left hastily, glancing back as if the walls had eyes, watching, judging. Days passed, and Sarah's dreams of stability began to crumble, replaced by spine-chilling reports of the motel's history. She learned that the previous owners had vanished into thin air, leaving behind eerie tales of their last night. The current owner, a charming man with a disconcerting smile, exuded an air of false hospitality that set her nerves on edge. There was something about his laughter, it felt forced, as if he were trying to suffocate the growing panic among guests beneath a veneer of cheer. On an otherwise quiet night, a small family checked in, their exhaustion palpable. But when morning arrived, their absence screamed volumes, echoing dread through the empty lobby. Panic gripped Sarah, but the authorities waved away her concerns, calling them absurd, as if her instincts had somehow betrayed her. Overactive imagination, they said, leaving her to face the shadows alone. Each passing minute intensified the feeling that she was trapped in a twisted game with no escape, a pawn amidst the malevolent energy that festered in the walls. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With each night spent behind that front desk, a sickening web of fear enveloped her. The looming historical ties to local folklore of spirits lost and souls disturbed wrapped around her, stifling her breath. What if the missing families were victims of something far more sinister? The whispers that taunted her seemed to grow louder, filling her head with nightmarish thoughts. The dread reached a peak when a figure loomed outside her office window, shrouded in darkness. It stood still, too still, and for a moment, time froze. The figure turned, a face obscured yet somehow familiar, chilling her to the bone. What was lurking in the shadows, waiting for her moment of vulnerability? As fear clawed at her sanity, Sarah realized the truth. A confrontation loomed closer. Something wanted her son, and she felt the noose tightening. What horrors lay within the heart of the Haven Inn? And would she find the strength to uncover the truth before it consumed them both? The next day, Sarah awoke in a cold sweat, the memories of last night's dread still fresh in her mind. Every sound amplified, the creaking of the building, the soft flutter of moths colliding with the flickering lights. Each noise felt like a drumbeat heralding doom. She glanced at the clock, it was almost noon. Had it only been a few hours? It felt like days since she'd landed in this ill-fated motel. Her instinct told her to leave, to pack her things and run, but the thought of her son to shield him from whatever malevolence thrived here held her in place. As Sarah moved through the lobby, the tension thickened like the stale air around her. The silence was suffocating. A shiver gripped her spine as she noticed a small, twisted figure in the corner of the lobby. A child, no older than 5, sat on the faded rug, his head bowed. Instinctively, Sarah's heart raced with concern. She knelt beside him. "Hey there, little man. Are you okay?" She attempted a comforting tone, but her voice trembled, betraying her. The boy lifted his head slowly, his eyes appearing unsettlingly dark, pools of void that seemed to absorb rather than reflect light. "I'm waiting," he whispered, a child's voice yet laced with an ancient sorrow. "Waiting for what?" "Mommy," he said, his gaze drifting past her, as if the walls themselves echoed the name. Time stretched, thick and sticky, as panic dared to creep in. Was this another lost soul, another piece of the chilling puzzle? Heart pounding, Sarah stood again, sweeping her eyes around the lobby. But it was empty, desolate, devoid of life yet punctured by the boy's haunting voice. "I don't think your mom is coming back," she uttered, not knowing if she was reassuring him or herself. "I know," he said simply, as if he accepted a terrible fate. Fearing the depths of despair beckoned, she quickly moved past him, instinct screaming at her to escape. Every step echoed through the lobby, a frantic heartbeat that matched the pounding in her chest. She needed answers. The owners, the families, the shadows dancing just beyond her sight. Why were they all drawn to this cursed place? Pulling herself together, Sarah sought out the motel's owner, hoping to draw more truth from his crooked smile. She found him in the back office, the smell of old cigarettes hanging heavy in the air. He looked up, his smile plastered on as usual, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Back again, are we?" "Chris, I need to talk." "Like, really talk. About the families. About this place." The urgency in her voice startled even her. His smile faltered for a brief moment, and in that heartbeat, something dark crawled across his face, like a shadow cast by firelight. "What about them?" None of them ever checked out." The words came out in a rush, her breath quickening. "Where did they go?" He leaned back, hands steepling beneath his chin. "You don't want to know, Sarah." "Try me," she shot back, feeling fire rise within, the fear no longer paralyzing her but fueling her need to survive. "People don't just leave," he said, his voice low, serious as the grave. "Some stories are better left untold." The air thickened, amplifying the sense of dread, and Sarah felt it again, the unseen eyes, a suffocating force closing in around her. She had to confront whatever was buried here. As she turned to storm out, the lights flickered violently, plunging the room into darkness. The echoes of whispers returned, a cacophony of voices melding into one. The boy's words ricocheted in her mind. Mommy's scream echoed through the silence. Not hers. "Where are you?" She rushed back to the lobby, heart thundering in her ears, but the boy was gone. Something sinister was awakening, and dread formed a tightening grip around her heart. Shadows morphed, stretching toward her as the walls drew closer, teasing the brink between reality and nightmare. What dark secrets were entwined with the missing families? And when would it all come crashing down? Sarah's heart raced as she stumbled into the lobby, her breath catching in her throat. The echoes of that scream lingered in the air, harsh and agonizing. She searched the room, but only silence met her, an oppressive void that clung to her skin like cobwebs. "Where did you go?" she whispered, the words trembling like leaves in a storm. The boy was gone, leaving behind only a sense of loss that felt more profound than any she had known. Shadows pooled in the corners, twisting and stretching as if alive, mocking her as she stood paralyzed. "Mommy," the boy's voice resonated in her mind, inching along her spine like a cold breath. What had happened to the other families? Why was she still trapped in this nightmare? Suddenly, the fluorescent lights buzzed violently, flickering back to life. Sarah blinked against the artificial brightness, the urgency returning with full force. She needed to act. She needed a way out. Her instincts kicked in, and she marched toward the exit. But just as her fingers grazed the door handle, the sound of scratching halted her. It came from behind the reception desk, desperate, frantic. "Someone's there," she called out. The silence thickened again. Without thinking, she moved closer. Her hands were unsteady, clammy against the wooden surface. Peering over, her breath caught. A pair of small, dark eyes stared back at her just like the boy's. "Help me." A soft voice meant to sound pleading instead cut her like a knife. It was a girl, maybe 7. Her hair matted, skin streaked with dirt. "Where's your mom?" Sarah asked, trying to pierce through the layers of fear engulfing her. "She's gone. They took her." The girl's voice shrank into a whimper, and for a moment, Sarah caught a glimmer of something familiar, a reflection of her own despair. "Took her where?" Sarah pressed, heart pounding louder than the clock on the wall. "Shoo." The girl glanced nervously around, her eyes wide, warning Sarah without words. "You're not safe here. Not safe at all." The air grew heavier, suffocating. An invisible weight bore down on her, and Sarah's instincts screamed to flee. But in the girl's eyes, she saw a raw fear that twisted her stomach. "Why are they doing this?" Sarah whispered, her voice barely a breath. "They want to keep us." The girl's mouth trembled. "They keep us in the dark." Just then, the front door swung open with a crash, violently slamming against the wall. Chris stood there, his face twisted in a snarl, a shadow looming behind him. "Get away from her!" he barked, and the flickering lights abruptly dimmed, sparking an eerie darkness throughout the lobby. The girl vanished, as though swallowed by the shadows. "Chris, what is happening?" Panic clenched at Sarah's chest. His smile returned but was void of warmth. "I told you to leave it alone, Sarah. You don't want to know what they want or who they really are." An icy chill slithered down her spine, and she could feel something stirring in the dark corners of the room, something ancient and hungry. As Chris stepped closer, his shadow lengthened, and the air thickened with an almost palpable malice. "Listen to me," he hissed, "not all who come here leave." With a surge of adrenaline, Sarah bolted past him, adrenaline coursing as she dashed toward the back of the motel. The heaviest shadows followed, whispering secrets of despair as she sprinted. She had to find a way out. She had to uncover the truth. But as she raced through the dim hallway, a cold laughter echoed from behind, wrapping around her, sending shivers coursing through her veins. "Run, Sarah, but you can't escape what's already here." The laughter twisted, echoing in her mind, as she flung herself toward the exit. Could she truly escape this nightmare? What awaited her outside those doors? Shadows danced just out of sight, taunting her with the possibilities that lay ahead. The air outside hit her like a wave of ice. Sarah gasped, her lungs screaming for oxygen, but she didn't stop. She sprinted across the cracked pavement, her heart hammering in her chest as if trying to break free. The motel loomed behind her, a grotesque sentinel shrouded in darkness, whispering her name with every gust of wind. Each step felt like it sunk into the ground, as if the shadows were reaching for her, desperate to drag her back. Glancing over her shoulder, a shiver crept down her spine. A figure stood in the doorway, Chris, framed by the fluorescent lights that flickered incessantly behind him. A part of her wanted to turn back, to confront whatever truths he told, but the stronger part screamed for freedom. She raced towards the parking lot, eyes scanning for her car. Every inch was coated in a thick layer of dread, as if the darkness itself pressed against her. The laughter echoed through her mind, a taunting reminder of how close the nightmare lurked. "Where is it?" she panted, frantically searching. Her car, a rusty old hatchback, sat alone, a battered lifeline against the malevolence that loomed behind her. She stumbled forward, fumbled with the keys, hands shaking uncontrollably. Just as she managed to get the door open, a cold hand gripped her shoulder. Sarah shrieked, spinning around. "It wasn't Chris." A woman stood there, eyes wide, hair a wild tangle. "Please," she gasped, voice trembling. "You have to help me. They're coming for us." The glance they shared sent a current of fear surging between them, a shared understanding of the danger looming just behind the motel walls. Sarah's heart raced, she couldn't trust anyone. Yet the desperation in the woman's eyes beckoned for a savior. "Who took you?" Sarah asked, her voice barely more than a whisper as she fought the urge to flee. "The Dark Ones," the woman replied, glancing over her shoulder, paranoia etched in every feature. "They keep the children their place under the motel." It clicked then. The screaming children, the lost families. Her chest tightened, her instincts fluttering with uncertainty. We can't go back in there. We don't have a choice. The woman's grip tightened. We can't leave without them. They will hunt you down. You have already been marked. A sudden chill enveloped them. Shadows elongated, creeping closer, as if sensing their fear, preparing to pounce. Sarah felt time slipping through her fingers. Get in! She shouted, yanking the woman toward the passenger seat. They both clambered in, slamming the doors shut as if warding off the very darkness that threatened them. She started the engine, the car sputtering to life with a cough. The headlights flickered. Go! The woman urged, eyes wild with terror. Sarah hit the gas, the tires screeching against the gravel as they sped away from the motel. But as they crossed into the open road, the laughter rang in their ears again, echoing across the trees that blurred past. The woman turned to Sarah, fear dominating her gaze. They'll follow us, they never let go. You don't know what's waiting out there. Panic clawed at Sarah's throat. What do you mean? What are they? But the woman only shook her head, breaths coming in ragged gasps. You have to trust me. We're not safe until we finish this. The car veered, headlights wavering as darkness flickered at the edges of their view. Would the truth be a lifeline or the very noose tightening around their throats? As the shadows mingled with the surrounding trees, Sarah felt a knot of dread tighten. A new darkness was on the horizon, ready to reveal the true horrors lurking just beyond their escape. What lay ahead, waiting to ensnare them both? The headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating a ribbon of dusty road ahead. Sarah's knuckles turned white as she gripped the steering wheel tighter. The woman beside her was gazing out the window, eyes darting back and forth, as if she could see something creeping in the shadows. Tell me more about the dark ones, Sarah urged, trying to keep her voice steady, though fear reverberated in her chest. What do they want? They're not just after me, the woman replied, her breath trembling. They need the children. They feed off their fear. It's like a ritual. You think they'll stop just because we're gone? No, they'll track us down. They know your scent now. A chill settled deep in Sarah's bones, her heart racing even faster. What can we do? There's a place. The woman hesitated, biting her lip. A shelter. It's not far from here. We can't stay out in the open. They'll find us. We have to go now. Adrenaline coursed through Sarah. How could she leave the safety of the car? How could she trust this stranger? Yet, the desperation in the woman's eyes was a mirror to her own terror. The laughter echoed in her ears like a siren, an ominous reminder of what lay behind. Just drive. The woman urged, snapping Sarah back to the moment. Her decision made, she pressed the accelerator harder, trying to summon more speed. The engine roared as they weaved through the darkness, patches of moonlight sporadically breaking through the clouds. Then came the first sign. A flicker of movement on the edge of the road, a shadow skimming just beyond the reach of the headlights, disappearing into the trees. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. Did you see that? She gasped. Yes. The woman cried. They're closer than we think. The car jerked as Sarah wrestled to keep control. Panic surged as the dense woods enveloped them, branches clawing at the sides of the vehicle like skeletal fingers trying to drag them into the abyss. Every sound was amplified, the thumping heartbeats, the screeching of tires, and that relentless laughter, which seemed to crescendo, surrounding them. No. No. Sarah screamed involuntarily. She slammed the gas pedal down, propelling them forward, desperate to escape the menace in the night. Suddenly, the headlights caught something, a small figure in the distance. A child? Her heart twisted, and she braked abruptly, the car skidding to a halt. Wait! She shouted, eyes wide with horror. As the headlights steadied, she could see a girl standing alone in the middle of the road, staring unblinkingly, hair tangled and clothes soiled. It's a trap. The woman screamed, grasping Sarah's arm tightly. Get away from her now. But the ghostly girl remained. Frozen. White as fog, her features twisted between innocence and torment. Sarah struggled to tear her gaze away. Please, the girl whispered, her voice soft yet haunting. Help me. The woman's scream clawed at Sarah's brain. Drive. Drive now. Terrified, Sarah threw the car into reverse, lurching backward just as the figure lunged toward them, arms outstretched. She nearly collided with a tree behind her, but she was pulled up short by the tight grip of the seatbelt. Heart pounding like a wild drum, she flicked the gear into drive again and tore away, her pulse racing faster than ever. Which way? She shouted, panic overtaking reason. There's an old warehouse up ahead. The woman shrieked. It's a safe zone. Go. They sped toward the looming outline, shadows dancing at their periphery, the laughter echoing again. The girl's plea lingered in the air. Why are they doing this? Sarah gasped, deafened by fear, her hands trembling as the warehouse grew nearer. Because they sense the fear, and they thrive on it. But as they approached the warehouse, Sarah could feel the electricity of dread building inside her. A storm of terror was brewing not just from behind, but ahead as well. What awaited them inside those darkened walls, cloaked by secrets and filled with more than just echoes of the past? Would it be safety or the eternal nightmare? As they entered the shadow of the warehouse, Sarah felt the darkness fold around them, trapping them in its uncertain embrace. The tires crunched over gravel as they flew through the entrance of the warehouse, the giant door groaning closed behind them like a skeletal jaw snapping shut. The sudden quiet felt palpable, almost oppressive. Only the distant echo of laughter remained, fading away, leaving a deafening silence in its wake. Turn off the lights. The woman urged, her voice low and urgent. Without a moment's hesitation, Sarah flicked off the headlights, plunging them into darkness. Her heart drummed in her chest, loud enough to drown out all other sounds. Now what? Sarah whispered, peering into the blackness. Shapes emerged slowly as her eyes adjusted. Rusted machinery and dilapidated crates loomed like specters, their outlines jagged and frightening. The air was thick and stale, a fetid reminder of all that had been left behind. The woman pressed herself against the nearest wall, hands trembling as she searched the darkness. We can't stay here long. They can sense us, feel our fear. If we linger, they will find us. Who are they? Sarah asked, her voice barely a breath. They were once like us, but they became something else, she muttered, fear creeping into her voice. Hungry shadows that thrive on despair. Just then, a sound pierced the air, a skittering, like nails scraping against metal. Sarah's breath hitched as her instinct screamed for her to flee. Do you hear that? She hissed. Yes. The woman whispered back, her eyes wide, darting around. It's them. We need to find a place to hide. A chill slithered down Sarah's spine. Shadows danced around the edges of her vision, twisting in a way that felt almost alive. She caught flashes of something moving, something darker than the darkness itself. Follow me, the woman commanded, inching towards an old freight elevator. The doors hung ajar, revealing a cavernous void. Taking a deep breath, Sarah followed, her pulse racing. They squeezed into the small space, and the woman pressed the button, yet nothing happened. Come on, please. Suddenly, a distant rumble echoed through the warehouse, rattling loose debris from the ceiling. The elevator jolted, and they fell back against the walls. The woman whispered frantic prayers, her hands clenched tight, while Sarah's fingers dug into the cold metal railing beside her. The shaking intensified, and Sarah shut her eyes, praying for their salvation. Then, the darkness shifted. A form materialized in the corner of her vision, tall and thin, with elongated limbs. It was reaching out towards them, spectral fingers curling like tendrils of mist. Move! Move! Sarah yelled, and they both burst out of the elevator just as the lights flickered back to life. But the warehouse now felt alive. Shadows moved, retreating into corners, then surging forward like a pack of wolves, hungry and ravenous. The laughter echoed again, mingling with strange whispering voices that danced around them, calling out in anguish. "Find a door. We need to get out." Sarah shouted, sprinting toward one of the exits, heart pounding. The ominous shadows darted closer, the whispers morphing into strings of desperate cries. But it was too late. The woman stopped in her tracks, a newfound horror dawning on her face as she gazed at the far wall. "What's wrong?" Sarah cried, dread pooling in her stomach. "It's a barrier," the woman whispered, fear tainting her voice. "They've trapped us." Terror wrapped around Sarah like a vice, squeezing the air from her lungs. "We can't be trapped. We have to get out." But the shadows advanced, their laughter growing louder, surrounding them in a cacophony of chaos. Sarah's mind raced. This wasn't just a nightmare, it was their worst fear made flesh. With nowhere left to run, she felt the primal urge to fight bubbling inside her. "We need to confront them. We can't let them take us." "Are you crazy?" the woman shouted, backing away from the encroaching darkness. "You won't survive." What choice did they have? They were cornered now, reality shrinking around them like a noose. Choking on panic, Sarah took a step forward. "Fine, then. I'd rather face them than die trapped like this." And with that, she plunged into the shadows, determination igniting her with a fierce flame. The air thickened around her, memories of laughter twisting into lament, each step heavy with dread, but what awaited her? Would she find the truth among the shadows or merely surrender to the void? The moment hung, suspended in a breath. And then, in the depth of darkness an answer began to emerge. The moment Sarah stepped into the darkness, a weight settled on her shoulders, pressing down with an almost physical force. The sound of her heart thudding in her ears drowned out everything else, even the frantic whispers of the shadows. She could hear them, feel them swirling around her like a cyclone of despair, drawing closer. "Stop. Don't go deeper." The woman's voice filtered through the darkness, pleading, but Sarah wasn't listening. Fear had churned into something else: adrenaline, determination. She felt that if she was going to fight, she couldn't do it trembling in a corner. With every step, the air around her grew colder, biting at her skin. The shadows stretched out like claws, eagerly reaching for her. Sarah's breath hitched as tendrils brushed past her face, oh so close, skimming her cheeks. A faint glow shimmered in the distance, like a beacon in a sea of black, but she knew it wouldn't be an easy journey. As she pushed forward, she stumbled upon an old workbench, its surface littered with rusted tools and forgotten dreams. A sharp pain shot through her hand as she grabbed the edge to steady herself. She looked down to find it sliced open, blood pooling, ruby droplets forming an eerie contrast against the dull metal. "Why are you doing this?" The woman's voice crackled from behind her, panic palpable. "You don't understand, I have to." Sarah snapped, defiance boiling in her veins. "I can't let them win." Behind her, the shadows quivered, as if tasting her resolve. They danced closer, hungry and impatient, unfurling like smoke and edging toward her in relentless waves. In that moment, she felt the pressure of unseen eyes watching her, their gaze filled with hope and dread. She couldn't let fear get the best of her. "Show yourselves!" she shouted, her voice echoing back, as if mocking her bravery. A guttural laugh erupted from the darkness, a sound that twisted her stomach. Out of the shadows, forms started to take shape, contorted and grotesque, eyes glistening in the dim light. Faces morphed in agony, mouths stretching into grins that belied their malevolence, and Sarah felt her courage wavering. "Look what we have here," one of them crooned, its voice laced with malice, "a little wanderer lost in our domain." So much fear to feast upon. The shadows laughed, a chorus of twisted glee that resonated through the warehouse, sending tremors through Sarah's bones. She fought back the urge to scream, forcing herself to move forward, to confront the approaching horror. "No!" the woman shouted, desperation tinging her voice. They are not to be underestimated. Remember what I told you. Was this fear or madness? Sarah pressed her palms to her temples, battling the rising tide of despair that surged around her. But something deep inside wouldn't let her back down. What do you want? Sarah spat, anger coursing through her. You think you can break me? I'm not afraid of you. The laughter ceased, replaced by a heavy silence. The creatures shifted, their grotesque forms hovering like a thick fog, distorting reality itself. Ah, but you are, one hissed, voice dripping with mockery. And we'll enjoy watching you prove it. In a sudden wave, the shadows surged forward, a tide of darkness enveloping her. She felt their coldness seep into her skin, her heart racing as they clawed at her fears, dredging up memories of pain and loss. Images flooded her mind, moments of vulnerability, every regret and failure laid bare. Fight it. The woman cried out desperately, her voice a distant lifeline. You have to stand your ground. They feed on your fear. Don't let them in. Drawing upon the remnants of her strength, Sarah forced herself to dredge up every ounce of defiance she could muster. She envisioned each memory of strength, of resilience, of love even amid despair. One memory sparked a flicker of light, pushing back against the shadows. It was a simple one, her mother's laugh, warm and unconditional, reminding her of all that was good in the world. With it came a surge of energy she couldn't let that laughter fall to despair. You have no power over me. She screamed, her voice blending with her mother's laughter, pushing against the shadows. I won't let you. But the darkness howled, an overwhelming, shifting entity refusing to give in. Did she truly believe she could banish them? With every ounce of will, she stepped forward, beginning to merge her light with the swirling shadows. It was a gamble. Was she fighting the shadows, or was she becoming one with them? And then, as she released her own fears, a crack of light pierced the darkness in front of her, illuminating the way. Sarah, no. The woman echoed, the shadows shifting as panic coursed through her. As the light expanded, Sarah felt it the unmistakable pull from both sides, as the shadows began to shriek filled the air, melding agony and laughter into a single cry that echoed through the warehouse. Were the shadows retreating? Or were they merely preparing for a final confrontation? In that moment, Sarah stood poised between light and darkness, ready for whatever fate might bring her. Would she emerge stronger or be swallowed whole? With hesitation lingering like fog, she took the leap. The light flickered, its glow dancing and teasing, almost alive as it pushed against the consuming shadows. Sarah felt the first real flicker of hope deep within her, a cruel whisper of power. But the laugh of the creatures rang hollow, a sound that threatened to drown out her newly found strength. Foolish girl, one of the shadows taunted, its voice slithering around her. You think mere light can save you? You're still trapped in our realm. The reality around her twisted as if the very walls were closing in. The tools on the workbench rattled ominously, clinking together in a frantic symphony of warning. Sarah's pulse quickened, she felt the temperature drop further, each breath feeling like shards of ice slicing her lungs. Remember, Sarah, you can't fight them alone. The woman's voice echoed, and for a moment, Sarah was suspended in uncertainty. Whispers surrounded her, twisting into a cacophony of her innermost fears, the dashed hopes of never finding her way home, the loneliness echoing in a heart that had lost so much. She squeezed her eyes shut, trying to block out the chaotic storm of doubt. But that only gave space for the shadows to push harder. She opened her eyes again, staring defiantly. Let us see what you're made of. The shadows surged forward, cold fingers wrapping around her limbs, pulling her down toward an abyss filled with her darkest memories. Images flashed before her, every harsh criticism she had faced, the abandonment of friends, the bitter taste of betrayal. The laughter grew louder, echoing off the walls, mocking her failures, feeding off her very essence. No, not again, Sarah gasped, feeling herself being drawn into the darkness. She thought she might cry out, maybe beg for mercy, but instead, she took a breath and remembered her mother's laugh, a sound that seemed to shimmer against the encroaching blackness. "I want to let you take me," she shouted, her voice a rallying cry against the dark. She thought of every moment she had fought back against despair. With a surge of determination, she reached for the light, letting it guide her. The shadows shrieked, a sound of fury as the light radiated from her, pushing against the darkness. But it was a thin line she walked, a flicker of bravery against the might of encroaching dread. The darkness pulsed, swirling like a hurricane, clashing against her fragile resolve. "Stay focused," the woman urged from somewhere in the void, her presence a flickering reminder of resilience. "You're not the first to face this." "Who were they?" Sarah shouted back into the abyss, her voice straining with effort. "What do they want?" "Feed." The grotesque forms shrieked in unison, their faces morphing into wretched caricatures of agony. "They'll feast on the hope you carry with you and your fear." Heart racing, Sarah dug deeper, feeling the ache of her spirit against a wall of despair. She focused on the warmth of her mother's laughter, the moments shared at the kitchen table. The light flickered brighter, thrumming with energy. "No!" she roared, desperation igniting her fear into flames. "You have no hold on me." The sound of cracking would rip through the darkness as the shadows strained against her will, their forms sputtering like dying embers. But the light was still fragile, it spun, twisted, threatening to flicker out. "Even now, you don't understand," the woman said, her voice tinged with sadness. "They'll keep coming. They'll never stop." "Then let them try." Sarah screamed, anger and defiance merging into one powerful force. The nearest shadow lunged, its cold fingers clawing at her chest, trying to pull something out. She gasped as pain shot through her, choking her resolve. But she refused to bend. With a sudden burst of strength, she released everything, the laughter, her memories, every wish to reclaim what was lost. A surge of blinding light enveloped her, and for a moment, she felt the warmth wrap around her like a cherished embrace, but then, with a deafening silence, the light dimmed, an unsteady flicker before it fought its way through the darkness once more, pushing back against the morbid shapes surrounding her. But the struggle wasn't over. As shadows twisted and writhed around her, Sarah realized she was not alone in this fight. Something was waking up within the shadows themselves, something ancient. "Something stirs," a voice echoed softly. It was different from the others, twisted and alien. "Do you feel it, too?" Did she dare to answer? The air thickened, tension swelling like a fresh storm, as all eyes now more numerous turned toward where she stood, a single beacon in a world gone dark. The question clanged in her mind. What had she truly awakened? The shadows coiled tighter around Sarah, ominous whispers slithering through the air like smoke. Each shuddering breath she took felt laced with fear, the icy grip of despair testing her resolve. The flickering light struggled above her, wavering as if it, too, were caught in the chaotic grasp of the dark. "Join us," the twisted voice crooned, alluring yet dreadful. "You cannot deny your nature. You are one of us now." Visions danced before her eyes, fragmented glimpses of lost souls, dragging their feet through weightless darkness. They stared at her with hollow eyes, mouths parted in eternal screams. Sarah felt their sorrow wash over her, a wave of despair that threatened to drown her in its depths. "No." She shook her head violently, trying to shatter the illusion. "I'm not like you." But the shadows only laughed, a cold sound that echoed cruelly. With every pulse of darkness, tendrils reached for her, as if ready to entwine, to consume. Her light was flickering, fragile and small against the pressing dark. "Fight if you must," the alien voice whispered, husky and filled with malice. "But can you feel it, Sarah?" The power of surrender sweat dotted her brow. The shadows formed grotesque shapes like figures of misery, weaving around her, begging her to give in to hopelessness. Memories flickered, moments where she felt small, weak, and utterly lost. They tugged at her heart, urging her to remember every moment of betrayal. Every time she felt alone, heart pounding in her chest, Sarah clenched her fists. "You don't own me." But the shadows pressed closer, breathing their despair onto her. The chilling whispers of her past became a relentless tide, a sucker punch that sent her spiraling. Just give and let go will take care of you, they tempted. As pain flicked through her like a current, time stretched. Every agonizing second felt like an eternity, gnawing at her sanity. That was when she heard the woman's voice again, stronger and steadier this time. Your strength is in your memories. Use them. With a fierce scream, Sarah closed her eyes. She summoned every joyful moment, every bit of warmth she'd ever shared. Her mother's gentle smile. Her friends' laughter. A time when she'd felt loved and safe. She could feel the warmth rising within, pushing back against the shadows, igniting the fire of her spirit. Light! She cried out, her voice a reverberating promise against the dark. The warmth expanded, sizzling through her veins, shattering the icy claws around her. You will not silence me. The shadows recoiled, screeching in agitation, the abhorrent laughter turning to rage. The light burst forth from her, a brilliant beacon slicing through the encompassing night. It illuminated the twisted faces, revealing their hideous forms in stark detail, highlighting their cracked and ancient skin, but their eyes widened, no longer mere instruments of malice. They flickered with something resembling confusion, as if her defiance was an uncharted territory for them. What have you done? I've chosen a different path. Sarah declared, tremors of fear still coursing through her, but laced with a fierce resolve. The shadows retreated, swirling wildly as her light expanded, engulfing the dark mire. That was when she noticed a thin fissure forming in the shadows, a crack in their relentless grasp. The scream, she thought, a sudden understanding washing over her. They fed on fear and despair, but the emotions she summoned were warrior-like, fierce with resilience, but as the fissure widened, she sensed a terrible presence lurking beneath. Something even deeper, something far older than the shadows. The air thickened with anticipation, and the shadows hissed, scrambling to contain what she had stirred. What have you awakened? The twisted voices fumbled, panic leaking into their tones, a sensation unfamiliar in the dark. As the tear continued to stretch, something moved behind it. Not just the shadows, but something far more sinister. Something powerful. And as the darkness caved in upon itself, a chilling question loomed: what awaited them beyond the veil? Should Sarah tread towards the light, or was she destined to uncover the horrifying truth that lay in the shadow's wake? The chill in the air thickened, wrapping around Sarah as she stood, defiant and trembling, at the precipice of shadow and light. The fissure widened, and something beyond the darkness stirred, an entity that commanded dread even from the shadows themselves. Sarah glimpsed a flicker of movement, a shape pushing against the brink, and her heart thundered wildly. Sarah! We need to move now. The woman cried, panic lacing her voice. It's not just the shadows anymore. It's something far worse. No. Sarah shouted, grounding herself. This is where I stand. I have to face whatever it is. She couldn't run. Not anymore. Not when answers lay just beyond the darkness, and not when children's laughter echoed in the back of her mind. Tendrils of dark swirling around her began to waver, their whispers transforming into panicked hisses. It was as if they understood that her newfound light, not just born from fear but from courage, was a weapon stronger than they had ever encountered. Then from the fissure emerged a pressing darkness, deeper than midnight. It slithered forward, swallowing light and shadow alike, consuming everything in its path. The air crackled with dark energy, thick with the dread that permeated the very foundation of the warehouse. Stay strong. The woman urged, her voice a whisper against the chaos. Sarah took a deep breath, steadying herself. I refuse to be your snack. She yelled, channeling every ounce of bravery in her heart. Once more, she gathered her memories, the warmth, the love, the laughter. Beneath it all, she forced the darkness to listen. You thrive on despair, she declared, but you will never have mine. With every word, she pushed forward, illuminating the darkness with what was left of her soul. Light exploded from her, cascading through the shadows, whipping them like stormy waves. She stepped around the break, the light firmly in her grasp, as she advanced toward the heart of the foul energy. "Sarah!" The woman screamed, the shadows around her writhing. "You don't know what you're awakening. Not all shadows are monsters, some are lost." But it was too late. The dark force lunged at her, desperate, instinctual. Shadows recoiled, shrieked, and fumbled backward in disarray as she ignited. Her light surged like a wildfire, breaking free of restraints. Then, from directly behind the darkness, Sarah saw what had been imprisoned. Shimmering figures, lost souls illuminated by her powerful resolve, began emerging from the murky veil. Faces she recognized, familiar and sweet, held hands like a chorus of colors, reaching toward her. "Sarah!" They called, their voices that of children, laughter ringing clear and sweet. "Help us! Keep coming!" she shouted, pouring out her light, her breath catching in her throat. The glowing souls, one by one, pushed through the fracture, shaking off the chains and pulling forth the battered spirits of those who had been trapped. In that moment, the warehouse erupted into chaos. The shadows hissed, screeching at the coming tide of warmth, battling against the release of agonized spirits spilling forth. The unseen ones writhed, trying to maintain their hold on Sarah and the newly freed souls. "Fight together. Feel the strength in numbers." Sarah screamed, her heart racing. Her luminescence glowed brighter, entwined with the laughter of the children. As the combined light converged, the shadows roared, their forms splintering into pieces, evaporating like smoke in the wind. The oppressive weight lifted, shadows collapsing around her until they became echoes, whispers fading into nothing, but the darkness from that other world remained, and Sarah's hands shook as she stared into the gaping maw before them, the last, lingering threat. It still pulsed, still hungry, but it felt different now. It was less certain. "I know you. You fear this light," Sarah began, her voice growing steadier. "You thought you could take us. But we take back our joy. Our memories. You don't own us." With each affirmation, the presence receded with a howl, the voices rising to a thunderous roar. The darkness fractured like glass, scattering back into the void from whence it had come. "That's it. Push it away." The woman shouted as more souls joined Sarah, cause and effect rippling through them. Together, they thrust their combined light forward, making the darkness splinter into shards, scattering the remnants of despair in every direction. With a final scream, the last shadow evaporated. And then there was silence. An absolute stillness. Sarah opened her eyes to a rush of soft, golden light flooding the warehouse. The figures around her smiled, transformed, free at last from the shackles of fear. The darkness had finally broken, fragmented into pieces that drifted away on the breeze. As Sarah turned back to the woman, who still stood beside her, they gazed into one another's eyes, understanding blooming like spring after a long winter. They had faced the abyss together and emerged stronger. The warmth of survival filled the air. "We did it," Sarah breathed, tears of relief streaming down her face. Together, the woman smiled, and for the first time, Sarah felt a weight lift. Hope rushed in where despair had once lurked. "Now let us get the kids home," she said, her heart swelling as she looked toward the glowing spirits, who began to fade into the horizon. Sarah stepped forward, ready to leave the haunted nightmares behind. It was finally time to embrace life anew. And as the morning sun broke through, illuminating the ruins, she understood that light does that. It drives away the shadows, transforming fear into strength, but there would always be mysteries left to unravel. The shadows of the past might flicker again. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending because your thoughts matter. Instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share. This is the moment to show your support.